We've discussed on the show just how unique the scope of Andrew Luck's control is, but it sounds like Cal donors would like a similar power structure with their general manager. That guy, Ron Rivera. The school's largest benefactors say that they will no longer contribute to NIL until Rivera is given full control of the football program. Coop, you said that this wouldn't be a trend.
I
But
did.
I don't know if 2 necessarily makes it a trend, but what does this latest news tell you about the general manager position and where it's at?
It might just be a big brother, little brother thing with Stanford and Cal emulating each other out of love, obviously. And
Obviously.
we saw it with
Two
Andrew
ACC
Luck.
powers.
It's fascinating, right? Because, Smoke, I think you were on the other end of the spectrum where you thought, like, hey, Andrew Luck making this decision to fire Troy Taylor and effectively bring in Frank Reich as the interim head coach is something that we could see more of. Now, what is fascinating about this is how this really kind of affects the power structure of college football. I think what you're seeing here with the boosters is they want more accessibility to the decision makers. Sometimes head coaches, because of the vastness of their job, don't have the time to be able to explain every decision that they make. I think California and the money people behind the scenes are saying Ron Rivera is a guy that we trust, has an NFL pedigree, been an NFL head coach. Now with everything happening in college football, between the transfer portal, between revenue share, the game constantly changes. They want somebody to come to the table and consistently be able to have dialogue with them and explain to them, how does this impact the program that you invest in? And this has nothing to do with Justin Wilcox in this position. I just think it's another person that Cal and their boosters can sink their teeth into that effectively gives them a voice and some decision-making weight in that program. And I think administrators around the country are saying, hold on, I'd like that too. I'd like more of a voice. I'd like a guy that would come sit in my office a couple days a week and kind of give me the lay of the land of what's happening. There's a power vacuum. It's always been the Kirby Smarts or the Mario Cristobals or the Dabo Sweeneys, and I'm not even saying this as a critique, but guys that have done this at a high level, every decision falls on them. You'd be shocked some of the stuff that they get their hands on that you would think, no way that hits the desk of a head coach. It does. But guys like Jim Nagy, guys like Pat Stewart, you look around, guys like Andrew Luck, these are guys that have credibility and established cachet within their institutions, that there is now an opportunity for these guys to step up and bring more of a counterbalance and a voice into overall decision-making, especially from the macro level.
Yeah, Coop, when you look at it, there's a couple of words that you touched on with structure and power. And what you're trying to do is now put yourself in position of being able to have someone speak on the behalf of the administration and remove some of that power away from the head coach. Now, the best head coach I've been around is Sean McDermott. And what he did when he came into Buffalo was just delegate. He was the CEO, but he wanted to see that organization get ran by every department's own CEO and allow you to be the best version of yourself. Now, if I'm a head coach in college and I'm from the old structure of handling recruiting, raising money, having everything to do within this building, when do you have time to be a very good head coach? And every head coach has a different model. Brent Venables wants to call defense. Well, that's fine. We'll get you someone that's going to organize and structure your personnel department. Andrew Luck, the guy wasn't doing a good enough job in terms of coaching, so you got somebody else that you felt comfortable with to do that and allow Frank to be the best version of himself. But the more that we get to this model and understand, and coaches start understanding, it's not that we're trying to remove the power away from you. All we're trying to do is give you somebody in and bring somebody in that you feel comfortable with and respect, that's going to do another version of your job, take a little bit off your plate and allow you to do the job that you are brought here to do. And that's win football games with the vision and the version of understanding how you know how to do it.
Can I follow up on this real quick? The CEO part of what you just said is so important, because I think about this. I might be the only one that thinks this. My experience working with coaches, the most important trait for a successful head coach is emotional IQ. And to me, the way to explain that is the psychology of having enough humility to be able to critique themselves and say, all right, where is it do I feel like I'm lacking the most? I look at Oklahoma, I look at USC. Riley's a good football coach. Football coach. CEO is not for everybody. And the landscape has changed. In this ever-changing landscape of college football, it's not the traditional one that he was a part of when he was at Oklahoma. He needs somebody like Chad Bowden to continue to push the program forward. That's his initiative. The guy that's supposed to be on the cutting edge and constantly asking the question, how do we get better? Where do we find the edge? And if you look at USC, they've done that. Now you look at Oklahoma and you say, you know what? I actually think Brent Venables is a good coach. Where am I a little hung up on Oklahoma in this big picture? Their accumulation of talent, their ability to reel in talent year in and year out, their ability to match their high school vision with their college vision. What do? They go get one of the best evaluators out there in Jim Nagy. You're seeing these coaches that are saying, hold on, they know somewhere deep down I have this insecurity. This is a part of my program that needs to be a little bit better. And then they're going out there and they're making moves, quite honestly, that I feel, if they get it right, can alter the entire trajectory of their program. So that's what we're seeing. And all these GMs, they all don't do the same thing. Andrew Luck has a very different job than Jim Nagy.
100%.
You know, one's an evaluator, the other one has the ability to fire and hire the head coach, right? Which I'm not sure Jim Nagy's there yet. Maybe he is one day. But these guys are asked to do different things. That's the same thing with the NFL. Mickey Loomis is a cap guy for the New Orleans Saints versus some other GMs out there that are some of the best evaluators in the game. You have to know where your biggest vulnerabilities are, and that's going to come up to the AD, to the president, basically to put a hierarchy in place that says, all right, what are we comfortable with at the end of the day, and what's the equivalent of a business operations or a president of football operations? Because those general managers, we don't educate on this, everybody's going to think that they all have the same autonomy, and that's really not the case.
Well, what you're saying makes a lot of sense in terms of the changing landscape of college football nowadays, and you're making the case that it's not necessarily taking power away from the coaches. It's more so there's so much else going on, and you mentioned the power brokers and the people bringing in money to the program and how they want to have more access to that decision making. But if I'm a head coach, they notoriously love to give up power, right? So how do you convince them that this is ultimately a good thing for their program, to have a little bit of that humility?
Well, to understand that college football is now a business. It's past this winning and losing games. If you look at Coach Prime out there in Colorado, he's doing more business than he's winning more games. And that's working out well for him. And as a head coach right now, you have to be able to be a cap guy. You have to be able to go out there and raise money, put together your roster, retain, make sure you're handling the portal and high school. Coop, that's like 6 or 7 jobs. And I never once said anything about development, training, coaching, the name that comes with you, head coach of your organization. So you have to understand that the new landscape of college sports in itself, you have to delegate your job responsibilities to somebody that you trust and respect in order for you to run your organization the proper way, or you're going to end up without a job because you're not willing to comply with the way that this current day and modernization of college football and sports is getting played.
I want to get to this comment here on YouTube from JW Crunch. Says, let's get out front of this early. No college GM should be getting out in front of his head coach. That is what the athletic director is for. But what you guys are arguing is that we're already seeing kind of a little bit of a shift in that general manager role and some of these programs that have, brought in somebody to help. So who is maybe an example of a program that has pivoted away from that full autonomy from the head coaching position?
I just want to make the point here. Stanford has set the precedent with Andrew Luck that is not the case, right? So, yeah. to your question in the chat, this is where college football is like on this path right now, where we're seeing start breaking away from the norm. So you're right. Yes, traditionally it would be the AD. These general managers, or think of them as president of football operations or vice president, are now being given the autonomy. Very few. But in the case of Andrew Luck or Ron Rivera or one of these guys that have the cachet, either former players or guys that have coached in the NFL or a high level in college, are now given the latitude to be able to make some decisions that would formerly be made by ADs.
Almost like a split between football and the rest of the athletic department. We're seeing that in small bites. But You mentioned a few examples. I want to get your take on this too. Who are some programs that you've seen kind of, I hate to say take away power from that head coaching position, but not make them the all-knowing, all-controlling?
Take a look at Texas Tech, what Joey McGuire's done, and allowing James Blanchard to be the CEO of all personnel. Yeah. I don't even want to be bothered with it. You guys set the tone. Understand that recruiting, it falls upon the coaches, but the evaluation of the players so fully on you. So I'm going to give you my vision, James Blanchard, being Joey, and you paint that picture for me. And I think that's working out well. And as a position coach, I would want that taken off my plate as well, too. I don't want to recruit, try to retain, develop, be the first initial evaluator in this process. And most of the time in our day, Coop, was the only one that can speak on that player. It's not going well. And when you are putting in financial obligations upon these players to perform, and as a coach, to get these players to perform at a high level, you don't want to start getting to the effect of dead money. Meaning, I've paid you this amount, and you haven't performed or produced to that worth that I've put on, to that total I've put on your head.
And these don't all have to be like loud hires. What I mean by that, they don't have to be shock and awe of a Ron Rivera or Andrew Luck or one of these big names. There are a lot of programs that we need to give credit to that have already established this type of process. You look at Oregon, what they've done, Dan Lanning, Marshall Malkow. You look at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin and Billy Glasscock. You have to give those coaches a lot of credit. You look at LSU, Brian Kelly and Austin Thomas. We're looking at that program very differently the last 2 years because of what they have done. You don't essentially need to sell the farm and now all of a sudden it's, hey, Andrew Luck's making all the decisions. We're not saying that. Mm-hmm. The balance of trusting and empowering people that you believe can push forward the agenda with the coach not having to put his fingerprints on every little thing that happens. So I know when I put my head on the pillow at night, if I'm one of these coaches, there's a part of my operation that continues to move forward even without me directly overseeing it each and every day. And you would be shocked how many coaches out there still have their hands on every little thing.
Just to wrap this up, got a great question here from Sean Nelson on YouTube. Do you think having general managers is good for college teams? Just a quick verbal, I think we can assume.
Absolutely. Yes. It's necessary.
Necessary. What do you think, Coop?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're all going to have different roles. You know, you look at Florida, like, not to beat a dead horse here, but Florida has done a really good job over the last couple years. You think about how they built that roster via high school. They only took 5 portal players this year. Yeah. To me, that's indicative of the health of that roster, okay? That being said, what they bring in, Billy Napier didn't go out and said, you know what, all these teams are hiring all these GMs that have all this evaluation background. They didn't do that. That would be a redundancy. They already had that skill set. They went out, they hired a cap guy. And Nick Polk, who had 17 years with the Atlanta Falcons, worked with athletes first. And they said, you know what, we're going to get our money right. We're going to make sure we're dialed on our contracts, and we're going to have a top-end negotiator. So they saw a need somewhere else, and they attacked it. So credit to them. I think it's all based on where do you think you're strong in your program and how do you attack that. And that comes with a incredible amount of self-awareness for the head coach.
College football front offices in general are changing quite a bit. Andrew in the chat says a GM is as necessary as coordinators. So we are seeing that general manager role continue to evolve. It's different at every single school, but Ron Rivera potentially getting a little bit
Riverboat
more
Ron.
Riverboat Ron apparently getting some more control over at Cal. We'll see who wins the standoff. It's time now.